Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a seriously fascinating case study called the temporary badge. It's this intricate, incredibly realistic story of corporate politics, borrowed identities, and, well, the undeniable, brutal truth of access logs. If you've ever wondered how things really go wrong and how they manage to get covered up behind closed doors, you are in exactly the right place.
So, let's jump right in. The central question driving this whole slow-burn corporate thriller is this: how does a cover-up actually survive a public audit? I mean, when a company is already under the microscope, supposedly fixing past mistakes, how does new misconduct manage to just slip right through the cracks?
Well, the answer is honestly kind of chilling, and it sets the stage for our entire investigation. It hides inside the things everyone is simply too tired to inspect. You know, the most dangerous lies in a workplace? They don't look like some dramatic movie villain scheme. No, they survive because they look like incredibly boring, neutral, everyday administrative procedures.
Part 1. The Midnight Badge Anomaly. Let's look at the deceptively mundane incident that kicks this whole thing off.
Picture this stark contrast. On one hand, you have a routine, almost invisible temporary visitor badge. Totally normal, right? But on the other hand, you have the problem. This specific badge was assigned to a woman named Grace Lee, who wasn't even in the building. And even crazier, it was used at exactly 12 a.m. to access the highly sensitive evidence archive room. This massive disconnect between a boring everyday object and a sinister midnight reality is our very first red flag.
Enter strategy lead Maya Carter. She spots this pattern immediately. She operates by a really brilliant rule: the dangerous documents never look dangerous first. Maya knows that massive threats almost always disguise themselves as quiet anomalies that show up before anyone's even finished their first cup of coffee. She gets that you have to look super closely at what seems normal to find what's completely broken.
And that brings us to a new analyst on the team, Aisha Morgan. While the senior executives are busy talking about feelings and moving forward, Aisha steps right up and asks the exact dangerous questions about metadata that the brass have literally trained themselves to avoid. She wants to know, can we define who changed it, when it changed it, and who approved the change? She isn't playing the corporate game. She's demanding the cold, hard, documented facts.
Part 2. Following the digital footprint. Let's break down exactly how the team dismantled the company's official story through forensic analysis.
So of course, the company immediately rolls out a highly polished, surface-level excuse. Security claims a contractor probably just scanned the wrong badge. It's the oldest corporate excuse in the book, right? Just blame the contractor. It sounds so reasonable at first glance. But as our audit team knows all too well, when an explanation arrives just a little too smoothly, you immediately check the timestamp.
Executive Assistant Nina Ross brings up a fantastic point here. She notes, people forget that background work still has foreground records. The folks trying to hide their tracks completely forgot about things like calendar exports, deleted meeting invites, task notes, and saved drafts. Nina's quiet attention to detail turns those easily forgotten background tasks into decisive, undeniable evidence.
Listen to how this timeline pieces together. IT audit specialist Jordan Price maps out the whole sequence. At 11:59 p.m., we get the initial badge scan. Exactly at midnight, the door log records an entry. By 12:02 a.m., the elevator footage kicks in. And boom, at 12:05 a.m., the camera catches an executive, Martin Shaw, carrying a document box right out of the archive room. They just connected a seemingly random administrative badge directly to a specific, high-level executive.
And this perfectly illustrates the ethos of a real investigation. As Jordan says, this is not suspicion. This is sequence. The audit team isn't relying on emotion, they aren't just guessing, and they absolutely aren't playing office politics. They're relying on a clean, mechanical, and repeatable path from an action directly to its owner. You simply cannot argue with a sequence.
Part 3. A design, not an error. With the irrefutable evidence locked in, we enter the boardroom to observe the true theater of corporate hiding.
The guilty parties immediately try to save themselves with corporate speak. I mean, the meeting becomes pure theater. They start renaming intent and softening verbs. They desperately ask for a healing period and a governance reset to protect the company's precious optics. They'll do literally anything to bury the raw, uncomfortable fact that a box of HR files was just stolen in the dead of night.
But independent board member Elise Warren? She is having none of it. She completely cuts through all that soft language with a razor-sharp reminder. Closure without memory is just a new cover page.
This is a massive takeaway for us. If you just move on without actually fixing the structural problem, you're really just slapping a new coat of paint on a crumbling foundation. Naturally, the pushback comes. Board executive Victor Hale politely delivers a very calculated warning. He tells the team, "You have already won. Be careful not to turn victory into damage." He's trying to frame the audit team's unyielding pursuit of facts as a liability to the company's stability. He's essentially saying, hey, you found the problem, now let's just keep it quiet.
Maya's response to this is pretty much the moral anchor of this entire explainer. She completely refuses to accept that exposing misconduct is somehow worse than the misconduct itself. She says, truth is not damage, hiding it was. Exposing a cover-up doesn't break trust. The cover-up itself already did that.
Now the full picture emerges. This was absolutely no contractor error. This was a highly calculated move by Martin Shaw to steal an archive box full of old disciplinary records. And why? To discredit witnesses from previous corporate scandals. It was a targeted, deliberate attempt to control the narrative. What looked like a simple administrative mistake was actually a deeply intentional act.
Part 4. Fixing the broken system. We've reached the climax, where the goal isn't just about catching the bad guy, but curing the structural disease itself. Maya totally rejects the idea of a quiet, behind-closed-doors fix. Her philosophy is crystal clear. Do not quietly fix what can publicly teach. She insists that this breach has to be a loud public lesson to protect future employees, people who aren't even in the room yet and who might not even know this meeting happened. Systemic reform absolutely requires visible action.
So, what does systemic repair actually look like in practice? Well, step 1, you completely rebuild the chain of custody process for sensitive files. Step 2, security must now report directly to an independent review board during any investigation, instead of to the executives who might just be covering their own tracks. This is exactly how you take power away from bad actors and give it back to the system.
At the end of the day, the system logs didn't care about corporate optics or healing periods. The record did not raise its voice. It just sat there in the servers, quietly waiting for Aisha, Nina, Jordan, and Maya to patiently put all the pieces together. The data itself is neutral. It's the sheer persistence of the investigators that actually brings the truth to light.
I want to leave you with one final, incredibly powerful thought that perfectly sums up why systemic accountability is our only real defense against a cover-up. If a workplace protects files but ignores doors, the truth can still walk out. Seriously, think about your own workplace for a second. Are you only locking up the digital files while leaving the physical doors wide open for bad actors? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. And remember, always keep your eyes open.